The other important thing is revenue. Commonplace, you have to generate revenue. Sounds basic. But isn't that what kills businesses? Undercapitalization, poor cash flow, and poor revenue streams are among the leading cause of business failures. Again, these revenues are better assured if you're going to be selling quality goods at competitive price with good service. Other thing, regulation. Understanding fully the regulatory environment in which you're operating, taking advantage of what it has to offer, but at the same time being aware of the unthoughtful and punitive aspects that are sometimes part of this very regulatory environment. The policy document discusses all the challenges faced by small and medium entities and what needs to be done to address them, but be aware that while you'll hear all the supportive rhetoric, it's still a work in progress. You therefore must build into your cash flow, into your processes, etc., the ways to comply with these regulatory systems. Fines, penalties, and the cost of audits can cripple your business. Remember, Sue was driven to tears and sent back home because she had no clue of the environment she was working in. Other fundamental, how do you source your raw materials, your inputs? This is critical. It comes down to quality, availability, and price. Do you source locally or do you import? It is one of the things Faye McIntosh and I were discussing with these young entrepreneurs from St. George's, because one of their juices having kiwi. And we're saying, okay, kiwi we don't grow locally. It's going to be costly to import. So you really may need to look at how you're going to be accessing your inputs and the cost factors in there. But you guys have such a range of products that I know you can easily mix up the chocho with the pumpkin and with the cantaloupe and get another combination that will be cost effective. My dilemma in Zimbabwe is, do I support small, rural, poor farmers, going back to my days of being a socialist and helping and all of that? Or do I take the dispassionate view and says, I source from the source that is the best quality, the cheapest, and I can get the volumes I need? And bottom line, I take a totally dispassionate, hard view on the issue. No emotions to make that decision. It is based on straight numbers. And this is where, again, the government can come into play by helping to facilitate an environment where the local product will be as competitive or cheaper than the importing of the product from the outside, because that's the only way you'll be able to compete. Personnel, another fundamental. Anywhere you go, and especially in our small economies, the pool of qualified and ethical staff is small relative to demand. If you try to add qualities such as imagination, creativity, and problem-solving skills, that pool becomes even smaller. I emphasize, therefore, devoting a lot of resources to recruiting, training, and supervising your staff. It might be tempting to skimp on this, but that will affect the quality of your product and services, which in turn will lead to loss of market share. Be sure to balance practice and formal education and formal qualifications. You want people with what we call good old common sense combined with technical skills. And then the other issue is, don't take long to get rid of someone who is not functioning. Once you find yourself making excuses for them, once they're making mistakes that are costly to the company, face up to the fact that you have made a mistake in hiring and act quickly. No matter what the cost of dismissal may be, it will be cheaper in the long run than keeping that person. Right? Don't, as hard as it is. Other fundamental, bottom line, be ethical in how you conduct your business. Right now, as large as China is, and as it is expanding and exporting all over the world, you have a backlash where people are saying straight out, we do not want products coming from China because of the quality of such product. And to be honest, in my business, I am banking on that, that there will be more and more push against the products from China while I bring my production up to the levels of efficiency it needs to be. The other thing you have to be wary of is the thefts of goods and services, embezzlement and fraud by your staff. These are major contributing factors to failure in businesses at all levels. You must have good processes and procedures. I know it is tedious. It sometimes comes down to micromanaging, but you must do it. Not saying you'll avoid this completely, because that is when you really see the creativity coming into play. Because our people will find very creative ways as to how to steal and embezzle and to defraud. Another thing is knowing yourself. Self-knowledge is crucial. You gain this self-knowledge by being effective and by listening hard to what others say about you. It is really important to know the ways in which you are your worst enemy, instead of just focusing on your strengths. This is especially a problem for men, and I'm not being sexist in this context. For women, the major point of vulnerability is being overly focused on our so-called weaknesses and to discount our strengths. We must pay attention to that. Another noticeable vulnerability in our societies is a preoccupation with materialism, with having the accoutrements of a successful lifestyle and all the bling that goes with it, to the detriment of the fundamentals. I remember one of my first visits to Grace Kennedy and to Douglas Oraine's office, but I shouldn't say office, I should say cubicle. The move from the big office to the cubicle was an important indication of moving away from the over-investment in profiling and bling towards creating a business culture focused on reflection, creativity, productivity, open dialogue, and thus, in fact, an environment open to innovation and meaningful risk-taking. So let's talk about innovation and creativity. In preparation for this conference, I sent an email to quite a few persons here in Jamaica to ask them how innovative, how creative were business people in Jamaica. And without exception, the response is that there was limited amount of creativity within the business sector. And these were coming from business people primarily. They are like Sue was initially, me too, me too. It seems to us ridiculous that Sue could have expected to sell anything by just saying, me too. But we don't realize that oftentimes that is exactly what we do in our small and medium-sized businesses. Too many businesses are very uncreative in their approach to production, to product development, and their business model. Too many simply act as middlemen or simply imitate in an unthoughtful way. in the land of Bob Marley, Jimmy Cliff, Buju Banton, Bogle the Dancer, and Shaggy, It Wasn't Me. Why are we not more creative in the business sector? And it goes back to the fundamental question, are we creating the environment that will breed and ingrain creativity and sensible risk-taking as a way of life? Are we creating an environment that allows our people to dream and take the necessary risks to make those dreams a reality? It is great to see the entrepreneurial centers that are being set up at the universities. It's great to see what Katalyxt is doing and what other individuals are doing. But think about it. How creative and how much of a risk taker do you think our generation, not talking about your generation, our generation can be when, in order to succeed from primary school all the way up, it was based on the ability to thoughtlessly absorb facts dictated to us, and for us to regurgitate those facts at set times of the year when exams were set? Do we know what Humpty Dumpty was? And why it fell off the wall? And why did the dish run away with the spoon? Those who rebelled against these restrictive environments were often brutally disciplined, caned. Only the courageous of the rebels survived and produced, and we were able to produce such a person as Rex Nettleford, who was equally comfortable on stage as he was in other fora. As we talk about building SMEs, it requires providing our kids with the space and the opportunity to be wantonly creative and to take risk. It must start very early, because the formative period for the development of the brain is between 0 to 6 years. We need an education system and regulatory environments that facilitate creativity and risk-taking, and one that does not quickly punish success or risk-taking by caning, imposing taxes, and other regulatory inhibitors. I don't want to say this is just a Jamaica problem, because it is not. China, who is doing fantastic by all standards, is struggling with the same thing. They come out of a culture that is relatively rigid, and they are realizing now that they must work on creativity and innovation. The great Caribbean novelist and intellectual worker, George Lamming, said, "Jamaica is a small island with a continental imagination. Let us use this imagination to build our country one small business at a time." I thank you.